Bowser's Castle is one of Mario Kart Wii's most difficult tracks to play. From hard to master low jumps, difficult stairs to navigate down and upwards on the spiral, high level tech scattered throughout the entire track, and more. Bowser's Castle has some of the richest yet also controversial history in the Mario Kart Wii world record scene. Today, we take a special deep dive into one of Mario Kart Wii's most iconic world records set by the Enigma, Japanese player Zeke's record of 2:20.672. Zeke is no stranger to the Bowser's Castle world record scene. Zeke arrives on the scene in September 2016, dethroning Wada S's legendary 2:21.320 that stood for almost 1,300 days. The old battle between Wada S and Jack in 2011 was actually Zeke's catalyst for being interested in Bowser's Castle no glitch category, commenting he was so surprised to see how the track still had a long way to go, even though the previous runs from the 2:22.059 to 2:21.803 were all impressive already. Watching these runs helped Zeke improve from a 2:23.3 to 2:22.3 back in late 2011 to early 2012. But he says he wasn't able to catch up to Wada S pre-Wimfi since Wada S had secretly improved his run twice or 3 times and set the 2:21.320 back in 2013, which this run was on a 2:21.0 or 2:21.1 pace until the very last turn of lap 3. Zeke comments this run was absolutely absurd for 2013 standards, and he says he does not blame Wada S for not uploading it for a while because many players were very paranoid after the cheating wave back in 2012, where multiple top level time trialers were caught cheating their times. It wouldn't be until early 2014 to early 2015 where Zeke was starting to hit good enough laps to get the world record on Bowser's Castle. But Zeke says he stopped playing the game because of obligations in real life after getting his old 1:49.805 world record on Toad's Factory. In early to mid 2016, Zeke began his mission of de-rusting on this track again to obtain the world record. He would improve from a 2:21.410 to 2:21.327 in May 2016, being only 7 milliseconds off of Wada S's time. September 13th of 2016 will be Zeke's first world record on the track, dethroning Wada S's legendary time, completing a 2:21.220. Zeke shares during 2016 he never thought it would be humanly possible to set a near 2:19 on the track. A newer strategy will be implemented by Zeke in world record runs at the ramp entering the open fireball section. Typically in the past, you simply wheelie off the zipper and proceed on, as doing a simple flip trick off the ramp loses far too much time, and timing an extremely low jump is not only difficult, but does not necessarily save a significant amount of time. Zeke would start to do a low jump at the very left side of the zipper ramp, getting a trick that will land nearly at the beginning of the row starting point across the gap. This is most commonly referred to as the DK ramp, as Zeke used to go by the name BPDK back in the day. You can sometimes get such a low jump here that you almost fall off entirely as well. When done near optimally, this saves upwards of an easy 100 to 200 milliseconds per one lap. With Zeke starting to throw this strategy in, it elevated Bowser's Castle to be even more of what players refer to as a technique-heavy track, or quote-unquote tech-heavy track for short. Compare this to a more graceful and simplistic driving-centric track like SNES Mario Circuit 3 that is completely flat, no flip tricks, no gimmicks, just one boost panel. Bowser's Castle requires a large arsenal of techniques used at almost all times during the track, with the only real point of downtime being the straight from the finish line into the first low jump. Funnily enough, Zeke's first 3-for-3 DK ramp run was actually a run that tied his former 2:21.107 world record, with this taking around 1.5 months to complete. He did not think he could improve beyond his 2:21.012 run because of the lap 2 pinwheel flame section being a pace lock for him. Zeke explains lap 3 should theoretically be the fastest lap to get a 2:20.8 to a 2:20.9 time, with your average lap 1 being around 46.9 to 47.2, and you are not fast enough to go to the left of the pinwheel consistently. Zeke explains further that it is way harder than you think to get a good low jump on the first ramp, perfect stair sticks, a perfect Soryu low jump ramp, and perfect geysers at the end in the same lap because of nerves and how hard this track is. So he ultimately decided he needed to start to learn the aforementioned DK ramp to get around 46.7 to 46.8 lap 1s, and a strong pace into lap 2 to beat this lap 2 pinwheel pace lock. Zeke also shares he thinks the hop strategy at this point in the pinwheel section is another reason why many players have struggled to get a 220 for so long here. Zeke would successfully be the first player to sub 221 with a 220.995 back in February of 2018, and continued to expand his lead to this legendary time of 220.672. Zeke hit a total of 6 world records in the 220 range. So what exactly makes Zeke's 220.672 so significant? Remember how I mentioned Zeke was the first one to get a 220 on Bowser's Castle? For over 3 years, no one else could get a 220. In fact, Zeke had roughly a half-second lead over second place, and the rest of the pack for years, which is highly uncommon on the no glitch, no shortcut categories for tracks, especially in recent years. Second place through 10th place were mostly in the 221.2 to 221.5 or 0.6 range for the longest time. This track is notoriously one of Mario Kart Wii's toughest tracks to learn, let alone finish a time trial run at this high of a standard to compete. There was, however, another player who had a time in the sub 221 range. Japanese player Soryu was a well-established top-tier time trialer playing from the game's release. Widely regarded as one of the top-tier online racers and eventually time trialers, bagging up several world records and numerous top 10s in his time, Soryu eventually started making efforts on this track from back in 2011. As Zeke has alluded to earlier, the top-tier Mario Kart Wii time trial scene has had its unfortunate developments, with many of the top-tier players being caught cheating their times, with the first occurrence of this happening was in mid-2012 when Cole created a way to read ghost data for any instances of rapid-fire inputs, mostly used for getting perfect chain wheelies. The result was many top-level time trialers confirmed cheating their times, creating an even more uneasy landscape in the scene with having to rely solely on the trust of players that they were not cheating their times, as this game is notoriously one of the most exploited games on arguably the most exploitable console of all time, being the Nintendo Wii. After the official Nintendo Wi-Fi shutdown of 2014, online gameplay with players were continued on the custom WinFi servers. Eventually, Mr. Bean's and Chatter's CTGP Revolution included incredible time trial support, with custom leaderboards, the ability to download any player ghost, saving multiple ghost data to your SD card, quality of life features like multi-ghost comparisons, and more. Perhaps the most pivotal quality of life aspect of CTGP Revolution was the anti-cheating parameters built into it. While nothing is unbreakable, playing through CTGP has been the gold standard to set time trial records in Mario Kart Wii since around late 2014 or early 2015. In fact, since that point, only runs set through CTGP are officially accepted for any leaderboards, as there's far more chance to successfully cheat your time trials under the radar without the anti-cheating detection protocols embedded within CTGP. For example, using a slowdown code during your time trials, or even save states like you'd expect when playing in an emulator, with both cheating strategies currently being undetectable through someone's ghost data. Having this backstory in mind will make the controversial history of Bowser's Castle make more sense. Starting in 2015, Soryu started publishing times on tracks that were increasingly suspicious by the entire player base, including the top tier player base. This eventually included 4 different Bowser's Castle world records Surreal was claiming, which was becoming increasingly more suspicious. What was very odd is that Surreal has been asked by players to send his ghost data and set times on CTGP to prove his legitimacy, which historically he has refused, despite already having a modified console since roughly 2011 or 2012 according to Zeke. The most controversial time Surreal publicized beating Zeke's 220.672 was a 220.475 run. Not only Zeke, but many other top players, including top Bowser's Castle players like Sean, have also voiced their high doubts for Surreal's legitimacy on this run and previous runs. Zeke believes that Surreal most likely used a save state just before the last turn or the mushroom spot on each lap. Zeke adds if you have played this game long enough, you'll be able to tell what a contender's actual best splits and potential are, which Zeke believes for Surreal is around a 220.2 or 220.3. Zeke comments on Surreal's 220.475, what Surreal attains in the run versus the complexity of the strategies he went for and the overall pace he was on makes this highly unlikely Surreal's run was legitimate. Zeke believes the way Surreal plays the track leads him to be far closer to a maxed out time for him compared to the other top 3 American players on Bowser's Castle, being Jared, Sean, and Beat having much more potential. Zeke says he wouldn't say that there's zero chance Surreal's 220.475 is legit since there's no concrete proof it is in fact cheated, but there are too many factors leading to the collective player base to suspect the run was tampered with. Another layer into the entire conversation was also Japanese player Nagiza, who was also a top tier time trialer, with also setting what would have been a world record on this track with a 221.313 back in 2014. Eventually in 2019, Nagiza was discovered to have confirmed cheating his time trials of rapid fire code, confirming he cheated his times on Toad's Factory, Delfino Square, and N64 Bowser's Castle. Nagiza would exclusively upload Surreal's times to his channel, which is also only possible if the player has a modified console to extract their ghost data to send to another player to record the times they set. The association between both players just further adds more doubt to the picture that there was a high probability that Surreal's times were not legitimate. Zeke shares he was really disappointed when he heard Nagiza was caught cheating his runs because his world record runs and my own world record runs on N64 Bowser's Castle motivated Zeke to get a 231 there. Zeke feels that Surreal was undoubtedly one of the pioneers in the game in terms of soft drifting technique back in 2011 and 2012. Commenting he admired Surreal and loved his driving style so much and put so much of his own effort into Toad's Factory to catch up with him back in the day. However, Surreal's post-Nintendo Wi-Fi shutdown times Zeke believes are only as fast as they are because of the crazy luck and doubts he can compete with the top tier time trialers of 2022, feeling that Surreal is a bit overrated. Additionally, the Nagiza and Surreal situation made Zeke hate technique heavy tracks like Bowser's Castle and opted for pure driving tracks instead. But Zeke felt like playing the track again because of the prospect of this bounty video. I called out a video bounty last year for any player who could beat Zeke's 220.672 here on Bowser's Castle, with how long Zeke has had absolute dominance on the track and how long his record stood. Who would have thought that Zeke would come back and be the very person to dethrone his own world record? Apart from the cheating controversies of other contenders with Zeke, Zeke jokingly referred to himself as an Enigma when chatting with me. I honestly feel this was very fitting for Zeke's character. After Zeke set the 220.672 in October of 2018, 1 month later Zeke had the biggest world record fail for this track, and regarded by many players as arguably one of the worst world record fails on any track. The pace was a double best known split pace into lap 3 as of the time he made that run, being on 2:19 pace and absolutely crushing his 220.672. Mysteriously enough, after Zeke set this fail, he seemingly disappeared from the game, with not playing altogether. This is where Zeke jokingly said that he stopped playing after this just to make himself look like an Enigma. On a more serious note, Zeke said one of the reasons he stopped playing time trials altogether was that grinding this track for a couple of years made him realize that this is just human RNG castle, where the driving doesn't matter and that it's basically not worth grinding and pushing a luck-based track to the limit that has innumerable random elements, which he names are the first low jump, the stair sticks going down the stairs and also up on the spiral, the Suryu ramp coined as the term to getting a very low jump on this ramp after the half pipe, the ending geysers, and so on. Zeke came back to the game in November 2020 and shares he played a track where the driving matters like N64 Bowser's Castle to copy Luke's soft drifting technique and improve his own driving standards instead of grinding this track. He would eventually come back here to beat this very 220.672 with a 225.24, dethroning his near 1,000 day old world record with the 225.24 on May 20th, 2021. Zeke's run to topple the 672 was technically better driven as he only goes for the DK ramp on one lap, as opposed to Zeke's 672 which goes for the ramp on all 3 laps, further exemplifying his immense potential here, which is certainly into 219 territory. And that's where the record still stands. Zeke's absolute dominance of Bowser's Castle has been for multiple years now, on one of the hardest tracks to play and master, with no one else being able to get a 220 until January of this year. January 18th would see the second player to achieve a 220 here, being American player Sean. Sean has always been a top tier time trialer and online player for quite some time. He broke into the 220 range in January with a 220.921, with plenty of clear potential that he is a contender to dethrone Zeke's reign on this track. However, that's not the only player to rise the ranks and show that they also have what it takes. February 21st will be the day the third player would achieve a 220 here, being American player Jared. Jared has had the world record on the glitch category of this track now for almost 2 years, and had many, and I mean many runs that were 220 worthy. Both Jared and Sean have been playing at the same time the past few months, and both were literally with a 221.00x time before both of their first 220 runs. I must also give a big honorary mention to American player Beat with his 221.008 back in April of last year, where he was ahead of Zeke deep into lap 3, but had seemingly stopped playing since then. The landscape of Bowser's Castle is rapidly changing literally within the past 2 months, with new faces now in the worldwide top 10 and the rising talent getting closer and closer to the first 220 runs. We end on present day with Zeke being nearly dethroned now, with Jared being only 6 milliseconds away. Sean has also had some significant paces and is currently standing with a 227.56. Zeke has mentioned a few times already that the trifecta of Jared, Sean, and Beat are all players with immense potential on this track who can beat his time and push his standards further. Zeke also says he personally believes French player Istior and Japanese player Nugget also have untapped potential because both of them have already tried to learn and adapt to Zeke's hop strategy on the second half pipe on each lap. The action has never been more exciting on Bowser's Castle in years. The only question now is, who is the first one to finally dethrone Zeke? Or will Zeke himself improve before being beaten and carry the torch further and further along the road? Zeke's ultimate goal is a 219.9 or 219.8, but says he would be happy with a 220.1 or a 220.2. I cannot wait for what the future holds for this track. Thank you all for watching this special edition of the Most Iconic World Records series. If you like this video, give the video a like and get subscribed to see more videos like these. I'd recommend watching this video next, going into a deep dive behind the history of Cole's legendary first sub 230 on Rainbow Road. Thank you all for watching, and take care.